because I am today talking about a bill, the very existence of which should not be, given the assertions and the assurances given by the Premier to the people of this province in the last election, as well as, quite frankly, to the people of the province as recently, probably as yesterday. Pretty much the last time the Premier mentioned something about the UCP plan to gamble the pension of Albertans, she made assertions that would make us question, therefore, why we have this bill before us, since it is very much a pretty outrageous bait and switch from the kind of assurances Albertans have been getting from this Premier. But nonetheless, let me unpack that a little bit, Mr. Speaker. This Premier has long been part of a group of people who toy with separatism and various ways to get very close to separatism with respect to the role of this province in the country of Canada. And those groups have, over the years, as part of their sort of extreme right ideology, liked to unending demonstration of their anger at Ottawa. And so this is a long-standing trope in the world of pretty extreme right-wing Albertans. And so, of course, the Premier has played with this idea off and on throughout her career, this idea of pulling the pension of Albertans out of the Canada Pension Plan. Now, as a result of that, and in different times, the members of our party, the official opposition of the NDP, have attempted to get the Premier on the record with respect to her plans in this regard, leading up to the last election. We did that in terms of bringing in legislation, proposed legislation that would compel this government to have a referendum that needed to be adhered to before there was any progress on the Canada Pension Plan. And they, of course, rejected that opportunity and that guarantee. And then during the campaign, the Premier claimed, or refused, basically, in a very steadfast way, to actually answer multiple questions going to her from Alberta voters about what her plans were with respect to the role and the security, quite frankly, of Albertans' pension retirements. Don't worry, no matter what happens, there'll be a referendum. But that would only be when pushed. And then once the election was over, almost immediately, it seemed there was nothing that this Premier could talk about except this pension. So she lulled Albertans into believing it was a dead issue, and then immediately did a 180 and started driving at breakneck speed down the road of gambling the retirement security of Albertans. So that's where we are today. And so before we even got to this bill, this Premier engaged in what she euphemistically, shall we say, referred to as consultation with Albertans. So let's just talk about that a bit before we even get to what this piece of legislation purports to do. expert have acknowledged are not reliable. People should not, under any circumstances, take a single piece of information that we are currently spending over $7 million providing to Albertans to the bank. They should not allow themselves to rely on the publicly funded communication from this government, because that publicly funded communication is full of facts which are utterly unreliable. So that's the first thing. That's the first part of the Premier's consultation plan. Now, the second part of her consultation plan is to have former Finance Minister Jim Dinning engage in what the Premier again euphemistically refers to as consultation with Albertans around the province. And as many members of our caucus have pointed out, you know, getting yelled at on the phone by Jim Dinning is not what most people would actually describe if asked to provide their understanding of what the word consultation means. Nonetheless, what the Premier claims is that they have, through this process, consulted with 70,000 people. Now, I don't actually have a dictionary with me, but I do know that if I were to grab one, it would say that consult requires two-way communication, some form of two-way communication. So let's just unpack what's happened with these so-called 70,000 people who Jim Dinning has consulted with on the matter of whether they want to go any further along the road with respect to gambling their retirement pension savings by allowing this Premier to pull them out of the CPP and give herself complete authority over how they are dispensed with. Well, the way they consult is those 70,000 people, let's just be clear, what that is actually is about 70,000 demon dialers and 70,000 Albertans who didn't hang up fast enough, and so they're picking up the phone before and not hanging up fast enough is counted in that 70,000. We wanted to know roughly how many people were actually heard during those telephone town halls led by Jim Dinning, where he often yelled at people. And we added them up, and I don't have the exact number, but on average we had 25 people who got to actually say something when the telephone town hall occurred. And there were 5 telephone town halls. So, simple math, on average, about 125 Albertans have been consulted through this mechanism with Jim Dinning and his telephone town hall consultation. Now, just for the record, we've already had, I'll talk in a bit about how many people we've consulted with, but I will say simply that that's about 1/4 of the people we consulted with in one evening in the riding of the member to my right, the Deputy House Leader, and the MLA for Edmonton Manning. So, yeah, not a super successful description or outcomes or performance in terms of actually consulting. Now, I will say, in the midst of these telephone town halls where 125 Albertans got to say words after they managed to get through the very curated telephone screening process, that there were in fact 2 opportunities for people to press a button to say, to answer a question that was asked on the town hall. Now, we've asked for the results of what happened there. And of course, the UCP government has refused to disclose them. But it is interesting because here is I just want to run through folks what people were actually on this consultation. And I'm just looking for it. I had it right in front of me. Let's just see here. I'm going to go. Let's just see here. I'm going to go back down to the bottom and keep scrolling while I'm talking. And oh yes, here we go. So the first question that people were told to press a button on was, what concerns you most about an Alberta pension plan? Press 1 for how the fund asset will be managed. Press 2 for whether my pension will be lower than CPP. Press 3 for whether my pension will follow me if I move in and out of Alberta. Or press 4 for I don't have enough information yet. And the other one, this one was even better. What interests you the most about an Alberta pension plan? Press 1 for the possibility of lower pension premiums for larger paychecks. Press 2 for the possibility of higher pension payments for seniors. Press 3 for having our pension assets and options under Alberta's jurisdiction. And press 4 for the possibility of spin-off jobs and a stronger financial sector. That's great. Do you know what wasn't asked in that telephone town hall that went to theoretically 70,000 people? Would you like to leave CPP? No, not once. Not once. So anyway, there you go. Now, in addition to that ridiculous exercise, the UCP government also put out a survey, and I won't spend a lot of time going over the ridiculousness of that, except to say that once again that survey failure. So here we are, $7.5 million. We have heard from 125 Albertans through the communication supported by that $7.5 million, and we have otherwise done unending levels of communication and campaigning to them with information that experts say is not true. You know, I got elected in 2008, Madam Speaker, and this level of shameless misappropriation of public funds, I've never ever seen anything this bad. Now, that being said, we did engage in consultations. We didn't spend $7.5 million to do it. We put out a survey online. We have so far received a little over 37,000 responses. And of that, 91% of people answered the one question that we put out on the survey. And the one question was, do you want to leave the CPP? And the answer was no. 91% said no. So there you go. Maybe folks who are interested in actually living the word consultation would be interested in hearing about our consultation. In addition, as I said before, we've had one in-person town hall, and we had nearly 500 people at it. We have 5 more scheduled. We'll have more after that. We've repeatedly asked the Minister and the Premier to attend at least one of our in-person town halls, and they have refused that. Meanwhile, there was commitment that there would be in-person consultation by the Dinning Group, and we are now a couple of days away from December, and the month within which they said those in-person consultations would occur, and they have not been announced yet. So it is a cascade of broken promises. We've got the fact that this government paid for a report which claims that their formula is one we should take seriously, and their formula for what Albertans could expect to pull out of the CPP, which suggests that we will get 53% of what's in the CPP, that somehow that formula is one upon which Albertans financial planning. The fact that that formula applied equally to Alberta and to Ontario and, say, BC would result in 130% of the CPP funds being drawn out, and the obvious mathematical impossibility of that the formula is that flawed. The Premier just walks right on through it, right past it. What are facts? Why should we worry about common sense and facts? Nope, we're just going to spend money telling Albertans things which no reasonable person possibly believe to be accurate or articulated in anything bordering on good faith. So that's consultation, and I want to say that it is a profound failure, and it amounts to a broken promise by this Premier. Now, there's another form of consultation that one can engage in, and now I'm going to get to this act. And that, of course, is a referendum. Now, the Premier has made a lot of noise about, well, I'm going to do a referendum and you can count on me, you can trust me. And what's wrong with the other guys because they don't seem to want to have a referendum? Well, first of all, as I've just stated, there's absolutely every reason for us to distrust profoundly any referendum managed by these folks, given the multiple broken promises and the way in which they have taken what the common person's understanding of consultation is and turned that into a taxpayer-funded political campaign. So very few people trust them to run a referendum, and there is good reason for that based on their record on this issue so far. But what's even more intriguing, Madam Speaker, is that this piece of legislation that the Premier has stood up in the House and claimed will actually ensure that we get a referendum doesn't actually do that, Madam Speaker. It's appalling. The Premier is out there repeatedly telling people that this bill will ensure Albertans get to have a referendum before anyone goes ahead with taking their pension plan money and gambling it. A hobby horse. This bill doesn't guarantee that there will be a referendum. What this bill does is it says that the Cabinet may have a referendum, and then it says if they want to get to the third or fourth step in the process of gambling away Albertans' pension funds, they have to have a referendum first. What it doesn't outline is that there's actually a very strong possibility that once we get to the point where this bill says there must have been a referendum, that we have now gone past the point of no return and the horses have left the barn and Albertans are compelled to continue in the process of having this government gamble away their pension plans. And it is one of the most disingenuous things I have ever seen, that this Premier gets up day after day and claims that she's going to give people a referendum, when in fact the timing of the referendum that is laid out in the bill may very possibly be too late. So that's the first disingenuous broken promise embedded in this bill by one of the most disingenuous premiers I have ever run across, one of the most disingenuous governments I have ever run across. But the second thing that is in this bill that is deeply disingenuous is the fact that it gives the Cabinet the flexibility to determine that they are not bound by the referendum. And so I can literally imagine the Premier getting up to the, well, never in a room of reporters. I'm sure she'll just be on her lovely little radio show that where she gets to, answer whatever she wants to answer. But, she will get up and say, oh, you know what, Albertans? I never told you we'd listen to the outcome of the referendum, did I? No. I promised you we'd have a referendum, and that's what I did. And you just assumed I'd listen to the outcome of the referendum. And this bill specifically makes it clear that they do not have to listen to the outcome. Again, it is shocking the level of deceitful drafting that is incorporated into a bill put forward by this government. And Albertans need to know that this is not a bill to have a referendum. This is a bill to maybe have a referendum, perhaps before it's too late, perhaps not, which they may or may not bother to listen to. Very, very concerning. Now, people who actually thought that they were talking about an actual need to have a referendum before they went ahead with the CPP destruction and the gambling of Albertans' pensions would have then looked to this to say, well, why aren't we actually having a conversation about the wording of the referendum in this bill? But no, 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 no. Of course, sneaky, sneaky, sneaky. We're going to frame this referendum as being the same as one that we can always change our mind on, which, by the way, we can't once we get out of CPP and we've gambled Albertans' pensions. It's done. But we're going to frame this as though that's no outcome of the campaign this government is on. And as a result of framing it that way, we are not going to compel this legislature to actually weigh in on the wording of the referendum. So, you know, based on the way government worded their so-called and inaccurately named survey, I think we can assume with great confidence that whatever the referendum wording is will be utterly biased and designed to achieve an outcome. One that many, many Albertans, of course, don't want to see. So let's talk a little bit more about this bill as well. So we've got a consultation that was promised that's not happening. We've got the government ignoring the roughly 90% of people so far who've said they, roughly 37,000 of them who said they don't want this. We've got over $7 million being used to spread fake information to Albertans about this in the form of a political campaign, using their political dollars. We've got to not do what the Premier claims it does, which is really an issue that I think we should talk about a little bit more seriously in this House, the point at which we actually hold the Premier accountable for the words she says. But that's a different issue. And now we have the possibility of a referendum that, if it's binding at all, it will come long after the horse has left the barn. So why do they want to do this? Well, they claim it's because they want to give Albertans more. But you know what, Madam Speaker? Once again, words, letters, paper, those things coming together. It's a way to actually find out when people are sending the letters and the paper. You find that this bill does not deliver what the Premier claims to be meaning. So what we have in here is a guaranteed benefit amount that amounts to what the CPP offers the day that the transfer is made. Should CPP offer more, there is no guarantee that Albertans will get access to it. Full stop, the end. That's in here. The next thing that it does is it does not offer the promise of benefits equivalent to CPP for Albertans who begin contributing to the APP after the APP is created. So what we will create is 2 tiers of pensioners in Alberta. We'll create a tier of pensioners who were part of CPP, and then younger people will only be promised the benefit levels and the contribution levels that this government believes they deserve on any given day. So that needs to be made very clear. The language about better or more in terms of benefits only applies to those who currently get the CPP, and it does not apply to younger Albertans who would be joining the CPP later. On top of that, this bill does, however, mandate an ongoing contribution ceiling. So it says the ceiling, so there can never be more or bigger contributions than what is happening in the CPP at the time that the APP is created. Well, that's a problem, my friends. It's a problem for 2 reasons. First of all, right now, the maximum benefit offered CPP is about $1,300 a month. I don't know how many folks here have tried to retire on that or think about retiring on that, but I'll tell you that that's actually, it's better than nothing. It's a good base. It is not the kind of respectful retirement that people who would have contributed for 40 or 45 years into a pension plan would be able to build their life around. And someday it might come that there are an adequate number of political leaders across the country who believe that we can do better. However, the other thing that's even more worrisome on this, because let's face it, benefit rates have grown very slowly over the last 30 years, and I'm not suggesting that they're actually going to grow a huge amount. It'd be nice if they did. I was pleased to be part of having them grow when we were in government. However, the other thing that can happen is that if the fund itself gets into trouble, investment mistakes, because of demographic changes, because of economic changes. Well, if that happens and there is a need to increase contributions in order to ensure that benefits of those already retired or those in the future are protected, well, this bill says, no way, no way, my friends, under no circumstances will we contribute more. We will just demand that people get less. That's the plan. It doesn't say that in black and white quite as much, but the impact of what is in black and white is exactly that. We would like people to get less, and that's what it says. So again, that's another problem that we see with this bill, and it reflects, frankly, Madam Speaker, the fact that inherently this government doesn't believe in the value of pension benefits for people who have contributed to them collectively over the course of their working life. It's you know, if you've got lots of money at the end of your working life, great. And if you don't, it's cat food for you. And that's pretty much, the overriding policy preference of most members of the governing caucus, clearly through their support of this bill. So another issue, of course, that is raised here is that many experts have talked about risk. The idea of taking Albertans' pension dollars and moving them from a pension the size of the CPP to a much, much smaller pension, whether it be 50%, which it will not be, or maybe 22%, which it may be, well, what we've done there is we've just created more risk. Right there, black and white. There's not a financial expert in the province, in the country, who wouldn't say, yes, the smaller your pool, the greater your risk. So I guess we just want to increase our risk. And let's just talk a little bit about that, because, yes, Alberta has on occasion made, we've been the lucky beneficiaries of the fact that we have a lot of natural resources in this province. But it's not always that way. One of the things I learned when, my very, very first briefing when we first got elected was, okay, what you need to know is that revenue and expenses in most provinces go up and down by about this much every year, But in Alberta, it's, 5 or 6 or 7 times that amount. And we are a unique province because we have an unprecedented level of volatility in terms of our fiscal fundamentals. And as a result of that, we are much predict our fiscal situation. And all you have to do is go over the last 5 years of this UCP government, and you can see that. I remember watching with awe at the former finance minister when he would come in here and he would project, a $5 billion deficit. And then suddenly there would be a $20 billion surplus, and then, oh no, I guess it's actually a $2 billion surplus. And the variance in terms of what he and well-meaning finance officials would project and then what would be delivered a mere 12 months away was shocking. Yet it's in that environment that these folks over there think that we should create a much smaller investment pool for the hard-earned pension funds of working Albertans in lieu of being in one of the most successful and secure pension plans in the world. Finally, the other thing that worries me in terms of the matter of risk, quite honestly, is the likelihood of this government playing around with contribution levels and benefit levels as we go forward. The formula for changing contribution levels and levels in the CPP is onerous. It involves a very high level of unanimity, not total, but a very high level of consensus, not unanimity, that's the wrong word, sorry, Madam Speaker, high level of consensus amongst provinces before a change can be made. And as a result of that, it's a rare occasion that you will find consensus amongst the requisite number of provinces for any change to be made in either premiums or benefits. It happens about once every 15 years or so, maybe. And so with that comes certainty and predictability. And not only certainty and predictability for beneficiaries, certainty and predictability for contributors, both employers and working people, but also certainty and predictability for those who are engaged in investment work. With a UCP fund to gamble Albertans' pensions, sometimes referred to as an APP, those decisions would be at the discretion of the UCP cabinet. And they could make changes to benefit and premiums anytime they wanted. And so a pension plan which previously was subject to the political winds of change, maybe every 10 or 15 years, would suddenly be subject to the political winds of change by, well, at least with this current government, every day. That, my friends, is the nightmare scenario for, I don't know, at the last check, about 69% of Albertans. So that's why we can't do it. It's just too much risk. Too much risk. Albertans want retirement security, Madam Speaker. Albertans work hard for retirement security. They want to know they can count on certain benefits when it comes time to stop working, when they get to 65 or a little bit later, or whenever it is they can afford to stop working. And let me say, I don't just mean current Albertans, I also mean future Albertans. And the fact that we're talking about moving to this exceptionally discretionary, risky, likely less generous plan of a pension plan means that we will likely find that one of the economic advantages that we have had in Alberta for so long, which was incoming migration, will start to disappear. It will dissipate. People won't trust that they can come and in Alberta and trust that their pension will be safe. And so we will, as a result, undermine labour mobility, labour migration, and immigration, and we will undercut our economic activity as a result. Secondary to this, of course, and the uncertainty that all of this creates is the fact that this will have a drag on our economic growth for the same reasons, not only, or for part of the same reasons, for the fact that we will find it harder to talk people to coming to Alberta, but also because employers and business owners will be unsure of the stability and the reliability of the fund to which they are compelled to contribute. And in some cases, if the UCP really messes it up, like they have pretty much every other thing they've managed since they've been elected, employers may find that what they're going to have to start doing is offering supplementary retirement benefits to make up for what the UCP managed to undermine through their decision to gamble the pensions of Alberta's working people. So all of these things come together to create a real challenge and a long list of reasons why we should not move forward on this bill. I will mention two more, Madam Speaker, and then I think I will have done a reasonably good job of outlining why this is easily one of the worst pieces of legislation I've ever been forced to comment on. There's been a lot of talk about, or just flowing from the matter of labour mobility, is the issue of portability. And so we know that portability, when Quebec started by not being in CPP, it took well over a decade once that happened to actually negotiate portability agreements across the country. I think in one or two provinces it took significantly longer than that as well. And we also know that with increasing globalization, matters of portability are also important for people that are working internationally, and that's particularly the case here in a place like Alberta. And we know that Quebec, to this day, even though Quebec's plan and the CPP started at the same time, that Quebec has negotiated one-third the portability agreements internationally than the administrators of CPP have been able to do. So imagine starting out with an APP. Once again, the matter of portability for an international workforce, it would be a complete disadvantage to employers trying to attract working people, both in the from around the country as well as internationally. And finally, I will just identify a question that many of us have raised, which is also very concerning, and we have not seen a lot of information coming from this government on this matter as it relates to this bill, and that is the matter of how people who are eligible for CPP disability would be treated were there an APP, and how those rules would be governed both in relation to current levels of CPP disability as well as their interaction with EI disability and their interaction with AISH and other provincial benefits. And these are really important matters because in these settings we're looking at people who are very, very vulnerable, who are low income, and they need answers. And we have heard from so many folks looking for answers on this. And with all the push polls and all the advertising of fake facts and all the Jim Dinning yelling at phone callers and all the stuff, we've gotten very little specific information provided about how this government sees the rights of people who are eligible for CPP disability being preserved or protected in a way that they can count on through this scheme. So for all those reasons, Madam Speaker, Alberta's NDP opposition will continue to fight against this bill. This hurts the economy. This hurts working people. This hurts retirees. This is a drag on our economic future, and it represents a broken promise by the Premier to the people of Alberta on about 5 or 6 different levels already. The substance of this bill does not align with the public statements made by the Premier about what her plans are, and so this bill does not in any way offer up a legal backstop for the empty promises made by the Premier. Quite the opposite. It gives permission for this government and any others to drive through multiple loopholes which would undermine the retirement security of working Albertans. And given the number of times that this government has broken its promise to the people of Alberta on this issue since in the last 12 months, there is no way Albertans will trust them with this issue, with an issue that is so important to them, based on a flimsy piece of legislation like this one that so clearly lays out a pathway for significant attacks on the retirement security of working Albertans. So we will fight against this. We will continue to have our town halls. We will continue to bring the voices of Albertans into this House, and we will do all the work that we can, and there will be much more to come. Mark my words, Madam Premier, or Madam Speaker. And you can be sure that Alberta's NDP opposition will not stop fighting to protect the pensions of Albertans from this government's desire to engage in a risky gamble of their hard-fought pension benefits. So thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Are there others to join the debates?